our moderator. We are recording tonight. However, as you will see during the presentation, if any of you feel uncomfortable about the recording, would rather what you say not be heard, the recordings don't get posted to our YouTube channel where you can look at past social halls. If for any reason you would like us not to post this recording, we won't. So just shoot me an email, shoot Burl an email, and we will definitely axe the recording. But for now, we're going to record it. Okay. I am very honored to introduce Monica Levine, who is going to be our moderator for tonight. She is the Director of Talent Acquisition at Offworld, a Pasadena-based robotics company. She has over a decade of recruitment and human resources experience and a passion for understanding human behavior, particularly as it relates to mental health. She is the mom of a teenager and a tween, so she understands the challenges of navigating what teenagers are facing in today's complicated world. We are very honored to have Monica with us to moderate, and I am now turning it over to her. Monica.
You have to unmute, Monica.
Okay, that's a good start. Thank you very much for the introduction, Judy, and thank you all for coming tonight. Tonight we have three panelists who are all experts in the mental health industry or in the mental health field, and they are going to talk about mental health from their perspective in terms of the areas that they have focused. And after they each speak from their own perspective, you all will have a chance to ask any questions that you want related to mental health. And if you can ask questions in a myriad of ways. You can either send me a private chat if you don't want other people to know who the question is coming from. You can put it in the group chat, or you can also raise your hand with the down at the bottom with the reactions. You can use your hand and I will call on you that way as well. So first, let me introduce our panelists. So Julia Grinblatt has been working as a registered nurse at Huntington Hospital's mental health unit for over 11 years. So she really has experienced mental health from a clinical setting. You want to say hi, Julia? Okay. Karen Levin was a hospital, and there she is, was a hospital and community nurse in the UK, and now she works as an office manager and volunteer coordinator for NAMI in the San Gabriel Valley, and she also volunteers with NAMI on their Warm Line and as a NAMI family to family program leader. And next we have Danny Levin, who until recently actually managed a pharmaceutical development and manufacturing company, both in the US and India, but he has been working at D.D. Hirsch for a number of years at their suicide prevention center. So he's coming to us from that aspect of mental health. So why don't we all get started, and I'm going to let Julia take the mic and talk about mental health from a clinical perspective.
Hello, I'm just going to share some slides. Welcome, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? See the slides okay?
Perfect.
Good. Okay. Hi, I'm Julia Grinblatt, and here at PJTC, we're trying to normalize disability as just an ordinary occurrence in our community. And one of the biggest disabilities is mental health. So today I'd like to share with you a few changes you can make yourself to help remove some of the stigma around mental health. I think that all of us, if all of us even adopt one of these changes that I'm going to present, I think our society, even our community, will be a much better place. Perhaps you're already doing some of these things, and that's great. Before I get started, I want to note that I'm not going to talk much about addiction because there'll be an event here at PJTC on March 27th by the Jewish Addiction Awareness Network that will cover all of that. Oof. So the first change I'm challenging you to make is change your perception. Now, when you think of somebody who is living with a mental illness, what comes to your mind? Well, I want to shatter some of your perceptions. First of all, we call mental illness a non-discriminatory disease because it affects everyone. In my work at the hospital, I have met people from every walk of life. People of every religion, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic class, profession, age, and sexual orientation. I've had patients who are chronically homeless, in gangs, and have committed horrible crimes. And I've had patients who are successful lawyers, healthcare professionals, business owners, artists, athletes, and politicians. This illness does not discriminate who it affects. Secondly, you can't see mental illness. Unlike a physical disability, where you can see that somebody's missing an arm or they're using a wheelchair, mental illnesses are mostly invisible disorders. Especially when someone is stable on medications, it is very hard to know what internal struggles any of us might be battling or dealing with. Therefore, we shouldn't make any assumptions about the person sitting right next to us. Secondly, I want you to change your knowledge. So here's a question for you. What is a psychiatric illness? Well, it's an illness, just like any other one in the body. Profound, huh? So it's no different than having diabetes or asthma or heart disease or hyperthyroidism. And we need to see mental illness that way, just like any other illness. It's an extensively researched group of diseases that occur when the brain chemicals called neurotransmitters are out of balance. So a psychiatric illness is a chemical imbalance in the brain. When there's too much or too little of the neurotransmitters in various parts of the brain, a person's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors are affected. The main thing to understand here is that this is an illness of the parts of the brain that are responsible for things such as impulsivity, judgment, thinking, reality perception, your mood, anger control, inhibitions, sexual desire, reasoning, concentration, things like motivation, and even the way we enjoy things. For example, imagine a time when you felt so good, like you were on top of the world, like you were so happy. That good feeling you were having was the chemical dopamine being released in your brain. Now, if a person's brain has too much dopamine concentrated in a certain part of the brain, that person can become aggressive and impulsive. Too little dopamine can cause low motivation, depression, and even psychosis. Dopamine is just one example of a neurotransmitter that controls our moods, thoughts, and actions. There's a few others that play a big role. The one unfortunate thing about mental illness right now is that you can't measure it with a blood test or a scan. Most of the symptoms need to be self-reported by the person. That's where I think some of the stigma comes from. One thing to note, I really want you to realize, all of you, that a person who has a mental illness is not lazy or weak. Actually, I think it's quite the opposite. It takes so much strength to live a full life with this illness. And I think my patients in the hospital are some of the strongest and some of the bravest people I've ever met. Change your language. This is a big one for me. I am asking you to remove words like these from your vocabulary, and instead to use phrases like these. You know, when you describe somebody as a mental illness, say, this is a person with a mental illness. This is a person who is living with anxiety right now, or who is having anxiety right now, or this is a person with a developmental disability. I admit that I myself used to use these words without thinking much about the effect that they were having on those around me. Then a few years ago, I was assessing a very depressed patient in the emergency room. He was so depressed that he started to plan how to kill himself. But he didn't want to come into the hospital to get help because he didn't want to be labeled as crazy. To me, that is really, really sad. That a word could be so powerful that it would keep somebody from getting the help for a very deadly disease. Can you imagine if we didn't want to seek help for cancer because we were worried that somebody might label us in a negative way? And unfortunately, this wasn't an isolated incident. I have heard many of my patients and their families talk about feeling ashamed or worried about that people will think that they are going to be labeled with one of these red bad words. Also, if you only use these words inside your house or only with your closest friends, remember that you never know who is hearing you. This is an invisible illness that affects people at different times of their lives. Many people don't get symptoms till later in their life. Wouldn't you hate it if a word you used with your best friend today prevented them from getting treatment a few years from now? Plus, I think that changing the language in your head is the first step to changing your actions. So if you want to do just one thing to help get rid of this mental health stigma, I think this is it. I particularly want to point out that we should not be saying that someone committed suicide. Instead, we should say that they died by suicide or they had a suicide attempt. The word committed refers to an outdated notion that suicide is a crime, like people commit crimes. It also suggests blame. We would never blame someone from dying from cancer, so we shouldn't be using language that refers to blame for somebody who died of suicide. Next, I'm challenging you to change your thoughts. When you see someone behaving or talking in a way that like you wouldn't consider proper, instead of thinking, what's wrong with them? I want you to think, what happened to them? There's a lot of research right now on how trauma affects people later in life. Trauma is anything from abuse to living through a family death, a serious medical problem, natural disaster, many, many others. So by changing your thinking to, what happened to that person? You will be able to approach each person with a lot more empathy and compassion. Remember that this is an invisible illness. Just by looking at someone, you can't see if they are battling a psychological trauma. So the takeaway here is approach every single human being with utmost respect, compassion, dignity, and love. You never know what struggles they are fighting or have fought in the past. Change your actions. So at Huntington Hospital, we have an administrator who's in charge of diversity. And she taught us the platinum rule. We've all heard the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, the platinum rule says, treat others the way they want to be treated. For example, personally myself, I love it when people come up to me and talk, and we can socialize and talk all night long. But I know plenty of people who don't like socializing, and they are perfectly happy sitting alone in the corner of the room observing everybody else. So part of respecting every single person in our community is making them feel comfortable in their preferred way, not in our preferred way. And the last one is change your habits. Take care of your own mental health. Even if you don't have a diagnosis, there's so much we can do to have a healthier mind. The key is to do one little thing at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. What do you do to breathe and relax? What makes you happy? What decreases your stress? What do you do just because it's fun? Just like it's important to exercise and eat healthy to improve the health of our bodies, it's important to do things to take care of our minds. There's actually a whole branch of psychology that studies happiness. It's absolutely fascinating if you want to go look it up. So I can tell you guys that what you're doing right now in the Zoom meeting, learning, feeling like you're part of a community, is absolutely wonderful for your mental health. So as I end my talk today, I want to congratulate all of you on already achieving this step on improving your own mental health. And thank you for joining me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Julia. Okay, from here, we'll move on to Danny, where he'll talk about suicide crisis management.
Sorry, Monica, we said that because of the mental health link, we'd take Karen's talk next.
Oh, okay. Okay, then Karen, do you want to go ahead so Karen's going to describe mental health handling in schools and the community.
Good evening, everyone. So as you heard, I work for NAMI San Gabriel Valley. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's a non-profit association founded in 1979. Our affiliate came about around the late 80s, early 90s. Most of the people involved in NAMI are volunteers, working together to raise awareness about mental health conditions and advocate for policies and social change that improve the lives of people affected by these conditions. Locally, we offer presentations, support groups, and education programs. Everything is free. NAMI programs are peer-led, which means that the people leading and facilitating the programs, presentation support groups have similar life experiences to the people taking the programs and support groups. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about these programs. So we offer a weekly family support group for any adult with a loved one who has experienced symptoms of mental health conditions. For attending family members only, they'll get better coping skills, find strength in sharing experiences, not judge anyone's pain, forgive themselves and reject guilt, embrace humor as healthy, accept that they cannot solve every problem, and understand that mental health conditions are no one's fault and can be a traumatic experience. It's about 60 to 90 minutes long. It's confidential, and many of our programs are virtual at the moment. NAMI Family to Family Education Program is an 8-session educational program for family, significant others, and friends of people with mental health conditions. It is a designated evidence-based program. This means that research shows that the program significantly improves the coping and problem-solving abilities of the people closest to a person with a mental health condition. They learn everything about what mental illness is, what the drugs are, etc. NAMI Connections Recovery Support Group is a free peer-led support group for adults living with mental health challenges. It is a group for participants to share their experiences, learn from each other, find understanding, respect, and encouragement in this safe and confidential setting. The group is facilitated by a team of trained individuals who are living in recovery. It is held once a week. Again, it's presently virtually, but it will be changing to in person. NAMI peer-to-peer education program is a free 8-session educational program for adults with mental health conditions who are looking for better understanding of themselves and for recovery. We also have something called NAMI Basics, which is for parents of children or adolescents, and is a 6-session education program for parents, caregivers, and other family who provide care for youth who are experiencing mental health symptoms. This program is free to participants. It's available both in person and online. By participating in NAMI Basics, parents realize they are not alone. They find support and share understanding, compassion, reinforcement, and empathy from people who truly get their situation. And their experience may also help others in the course. So together they all learn that recovery is a journey and there is hope. NAMI in Our Own Voice is a presentation which changes attitudes and assumptions and ideas about people with mental health conditions, going on from what Julia says. These are free 40, 60, or 90-minute presentations which provide a personal perspective of mental health conditions as leaders with lived experience talk openly about what it's like to have a mental health condition. NAMI Ending the Silence is another engaging presentation for middle and high schools that helps audience members learn about the warning signs of mental health conditions and what steps to take if you or a loved one are showing symptoms of a mental health condition. There are 3 presentations, one for students, one for staff, and one for families. And these are also presented. This is presented at churches or whatever. It can be presented anywhere. In schools, we have something called NAMI on Campus High School. These are clubs that are student-led, that raise mental health awareness and reduce stigma on campus through peer-led activities and education. Student leaders are empowered with lots of toolkits, materials, and resources to help run the club. And it's fun and it's an educational process. The club is open to all students, with or without mental health conditions. It's a safe place for students to go. There is also something called Crisis Intervention Program. So we have volunteers that go out into the community, specifically with law enforcement, and tell their stories about what's happened, and hope to reduce fatalities and the amount of mentally ill people that are going to jail instead of hospitals for treatment. And it's very impactful, and it really does help to stop some of the mentally ill going into. They shouldn't be going to jail to go to hospitals. So that's my mini fast presentation. Over to Monica.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate you sharing more about NAMI and mental health in the community. Okay, Danny, take it away.
I'm gonna just try and share my screen if I can. Is that showing a Didi Hirsch slide?
It is.
Okay, so thank you all for organizing this valuable session. So suicide, well, if you've suffered the loss of a loved one by suicide, or if you know anyone who's suffered such a loss, or if you know anyone who's commenting that they're contemplating taking their own life, then you'll know it's a frightening and devastatingly catastrophic experience for everyone concerned, whether for the individuals who are suffering suicidal desire, or their family, or their friends, or their colleagues, or anybody in their orbit. So statistics show that suicidal desire can affect all ages, but the 18 to 25-year-old young adults age group are most affected, with around 12% of this age group having experienced suicidal desire or planning for suicide over the course of any year, based on government SAMHSA survey data. Whoops, okay. So over the course of a year in the US, around 12 million adults seriously consider ending their lives. Of these, around 3.5 million formulate definitive plans for how to go about it, and 1.4 million proceed and attempt suicide, leading to around 50,000 deaths a year. Now that's, to kind of put that in context, that's more than twice as many suicides as there are homicides in a year, which is a pretty sobering point of reference. In particular, suicide is the second highest cause of death for young people in each of the age groups of as young as 10 to 14-year-olds, 15 to 24-year-olds, and also 25 to 34-year-olds, which is pretty chilling information. Suicide's a really serious problem, especially for young adults, but also, as Julia says, without discrimination for all ages, for all creeds, for all their ethnicities, and for all orientations. So to help in addressing this through the small part that I can contribute, I volunteer for Edie Hirsch Suicide Prevention Center, that's a part of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, contactable at 1-800-273-8255, which is an agency that also provides a chat service at suicidepreventionlifeline.org, which you can find through Google search for suicide. Edie Hirsch also accommodates a variety of other crisis networks, including teenline.org and the samsa.gov disaster distress helpline, online or also through telephone. And there's also now quite dramatically, there's now a 3-digit national suicide prevention lifeline quick dialing code of 988. So unlike or akin to 911 for emergency services, 988 will connect you directly to the Lifeline network for suicide crisis support. That's a line which will be officially launched from July 16th, 2022, but I believe it is already operational. So these resources, as well as suicide survival and also suicide bereavement support, are available through Edie Hirsch and through the various networks they accommodate for those experiencing suicidal desire, as well as for family and friends and others who have been affected or who are working with somebody or living with or connected with somebody who has suicidal desire. So what does the Suicide Prevention Centre do? And more importantly, or as importantly, what can each of us do if we suspect suicidal intentions from somebody we know? Well, you can and should look for signs of difficulty in coping that you could consider as invitations for dialogue. These signs can be verbal or behavioral, or through physical appearance, or things that are written down, or any change or lack of communication, or any other significant changes in how your loved ones present themselves. They can prompt the dialogue that's needed. You can and should ask directly if they plan to end their life, how and when, because that can gauge immediacy and risk mitigation opportunities. Now that can be a little counterintuitive. A lot of people are concerned that it's going to put or formulate ideas or seed ideas, but research shows that it's a beneficial thing to do. So these are examples of questions that you can ask. You can, most importantly, you can and should acknowledge and validate the pain and anguish that's being felt. The kind of urge and need that needs to be managed is not to try and fix or minimize or negate the pain and anguish that people are experiencing. Most of the callers that I speak to who call the Suicide Prevention Centre feel that their pain is simply not heard, or at least not acknowledged, and they desperately need to be validated. So it's really important to empathize, to really accommodate and feel and reflect back the pain that's being expressed through reflective speaking and through empathy for what they're going through, which is not really the same as simply sympathizing with them, you know, not just saying what a shame, but rather really envisage and empathize with what's being experienced. You can and should accept and share and validate the darkness that people are experiencing and their hopelessness by reflective listening, reflecting back and validating by that means what they're saying. Yes, you are facing terrible circumstances. That sounds really horrendous. That's awful. Your pain is understandable. Now, you should also listen for any positive signs of ambivalence that might offer later opportunities to build on. For example, any connection with individuals for whom people are uplifted, or concern for pets or plans that people have, or positive interests. Those can be valuable tools for helping to mitigate risk. So you can and should assess and mitigate risk, decide what's most appropriate, whether it's a 911 call or an emergency room visit if the individual really is sharing that either they have already put their life at risk, or they've already taken an overdose, they've already done something to harm themselves, or they're imminently planning to do something, or seek to mitigate risk otherwise. So work, discuss, put away the knife, put away the pills, stop the car, move away from the precipice or whatever, at least for now. And it sounds a kind of temporary measure, but that actually is a very important step. And really that's the kind of philosophy of the suicide prevention resources, is just to look at the immediate term and look to make the situation safe, at least for now. You can and should reinforce the individual's value and the positive connections in their life. Build on any of the topics of ambivalence that they raised earlier. You can refer to other agencies, follow up with them, call them back, make a connection, look to kind of extend the lifeline a little further, and offer resources to reinforce the positivity. So as we've said, 911 or the emergency room if it's immediate risk, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which again is shown there at the top left, Teen Line for teen connections, and both of these are either through chat or through talking. NAMI that Karen's just described, which has Warm Line and all the other resources and supports that Karen talked through. Domestic Violence Refuge, LGBTQ resources, the Trevor Project, for example, addiction resources, which, as has been acknowledged, will be a subject of a future session, homelessness resources, or whatever other needs. Really, again, the principle is not looking for a full solution to somebody's life challenges, but more a means to facilitate safety one day at a time. And again, as Julia mentioned, it's very important also to self-care. You have to help, you have to take care of yourself before you can help anybody else. And certainly some of these, being exposed to a high level of pain and anguish can be quite challenging for yourself. So take care for yourself as well as for your loved ones. So with that, a sincere thank you to everybody on this Zoom call, which is really gratifying and important. And thanks to the organizers and hosts for setting this up and for everybody's interest, care and concern. Best wishes to you and to your loved ones. And please make a note of the Lifeline telephone number 1-800-273-8255 today if you need help or support for yourself or anybody else. Thank you.
Annie, thank you very much for the valuable information, and to Julia and Karen as well. I really appreciate all of your insight. What we're going to do now is open it up to all of you to ask questions related to anything to do with mental health. And you can, again, send me a private message if you prefer anonymity, or you can send a message in the group chat, or you can use the reactions button, as I mentioned, on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen to raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Okay, the first question I see is, people with an undiagnosed mental illness or who have been diagnosed but who won't take medication often self-medicate with alcohol and/or drugs. If such a person refuses to get sober, is there any way for the mental illness to be diagnosed and treated? Julia, do you want to answer this one?
Yes, so first of all, it's really, really, really hard to help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. Even those that we force into a hospital, we can only do so much after their discharge if they don't have the motivation, the willpower, the self-worth to keep on the treatment. That's very, very hard. First of all, if you have a loved one who has problems with substance use disorders or other addictions, Al-Anon is an amazing resource. It's like, you've heard of Alcoholic Anonymous. This is the loved ones support people version, and they teach you how to keep loving that person, but still setting limits on what you can do and cannot do, and it's support, and it's wonderful. In terms of diagnosis, only a physician can put a diagnosis on somebody, so they would have to either be in a hospital, admitted to a hospital, or go to a doctor's office. So pretty much keep loving that person, keep encouraging them. If they are danger to themselves, a danger to others, or they're what we call grave disability, so you can't safely take care of your basic needs, then you can call 911 and they'll bring them in the hospital, and they will have to stay in the hospital and have to be seen by a mental health professional. So those are kind of the options.
Okay, thank you, Julia.
Monica, if I could just add,
Sure, please.
a lot of the police services do have psychiatric support expertise. If you communicate that need to them when you call 911, then they can send a specialist psychiatric support team rather than just, I mean, the police themselves are constantly trained also, but it can be helpful also to make that clear, and then the appropriate resources can augment the police report.
Okay, thank you. I see a hand raised from Richard Ricciardi. I hope I'm not butchering your last name.
Yes, that would be fine, yes. My question is regarding rehabilitation. I know many people that, for example, a person who is diagnosed with schizophrenia, who holds a job, and she's an active member in the community. Is there of a process by which it goes from treatment to support group, and they have a regular life, and yet they have this condition that they live with? I'm just wondering if there is a way of how this goes, or association, or how this works, because I know a lot of people that live through this, and I'm just wondering if you're familiar with it, or how to go about it, or anything about that in that regard.
Julia, do you want to answer this one?
So there's a lot of people who are working and doing wonderfully. Schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety, depression, all of that. There's also a lot of support groups out there. With one of the emails, we sent a list of resources, and there's a lot of people who will go to work during the day and go to the groups in the evenings. There's outpatient programs called IOP, intensive outpatient programs. There's just general support groups. Danny and Karen, maybe you guys know more what's in the community in terms of support groups.
There are lots of different support groups. So we have a support group for people in the community. It's usually somebody who has come to terms with their mental health diagnosis and it wants to learn more. So that's our support group and education program. There's also the DBSA. It's the depression and bipolar team group, support group. That's it, support group. And it's in, there's one in Pasadena and it's held every week, about 3 times a week. And it's a great support. But again, usually the person has to know that they're sick to be able to get something out of the support group program. So usually the best start is to get treatment with a psychiatrist, and then the next is to have a counselor. So it's a psychologist or a counselor is necessary with the full treatment of a mental illness, and the support group is a really good third part. It's like another limb to the wellness, getting well again. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So they help each other. And also, if they join NAMI, they actually can train to be all the programmers. They can be the facilitators. They can do many volunteer positions. In fact, they get paid. A lot of them get paid for all the presentations and things. So there's giving back. Once somebody's learned how to deal with the mental health, they give back, which is phenomenal.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I don't think I see any other hands at the moment. So we actually got some questions that people from the community sent in. So I'm going to read off one of those. This is a question for Danny. My 19-year-old daughter's roommate called me to share her concerns that my daughter is depressed after falling out with her friends and is saying that ending her life might be the best solution to her problems. My daughter hasn't confided any of this to me. How do I get her admitted to a psychiatric hospital to get the care she needs?
Thanks, Monica. So I guess it can be very alarming when somebody you love is threatening to end their life, and a number of callers will say, how do I get that person into a psychiatric hospital? But as has been alluded to earlier, if an individual isn't ready for that, if they're not accepting their situation, then unless they are, as Julia said, unless they're an immediate threat, an explicit threat to themselves or anybody else, then it's really not viable to force them into a psychiatric hospital. So that's one thing. In this case, I'd encourage, if this is a father who's concerned that he is getting that connection to his daughter through a friend, then build on that relationship, build on what is working. Obviously, work with that individual to express all the things that I talked about in the presentation about empathy and understanding, and express that you would like to communicate that to your daughter, but also support the connection that is working. So support the friend, encourage the friend to contact the suicide lifeline, suicide prevention lifeline, encourage through the friend to get the daughter to call, and work with that resource that is on the ground, that is working, and just work to really to understand what the drivers are for the despair that the daughter is facing, and don't try and fix those, but really try and validate, understand, empathize, accept, acknowledge, and support. And that, like I said before, most of the callers into the Suicide Prevention Centre, it's quite unbelievable, but they really feel, rightly or wrongly, that nobody understands the pain that they're in. So that really is the most powerful key to connection and support, from which everything else is possible. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Another question was, what are some of the mental health signs that I should be looking for in my children? Karen, that's a question for you.
So their mental health signs, not specifically suicide, are things like when you see your child that's very sad, sort of and withdrawn for more than 2 weeks. Every kid feels up and down. Like can have some really risk-taking behaviors. They may be self-harming or harming others. Sudden overwhelming fear for no reason, anxiety that's like racing heart, physical discomfort or fast breathing. Maybe they're seeing or hearing things that aren't there. A lot of changes in mood, like drastic changes in mood and behavior and personality. Extreme difficulty in concentrating. These are all signs of illness. Intense worries or fears. They can be throwing up, vomiting a lot, or taking a lot of laxatives, or not eating, losing a lot of weight, or a lot of weight gain, using alcohol and drugs. And also, I've said about the self-harm. Suicide, I think Danny might have gone over the suicide signs, because I think you did, so I don't think I need to go over the suicide signs. But with kids, they really behave recklessly, or can behave recklessly. So that's some of the signs. Does that help? Yeah.
Very helpful, thank you. Okay, another one is, I'm feeling angry and irritated most of the time. I'm in my 40s now, but I have felt this way since I was in college. It seems to be getting worse. Should I see my primary care doctor or a therapist? Julia, I think you can answer that one.
My rule of thumb, if you're asking the question or even thinking about the question, then the answer is yes, 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 definitely, of course. I don't know why people wonder, like, should I go see the doctor? Should I not go see? Should I talk to? Just go do it. Like, what's the worst thing? They tell you, hey, you're fine. Like, hey, great. Then you can move on with your life. So, first, no matter what's going on, like if you have a pain in your elbow, right? Are you going to be sitting there wondering, should I go to the doctor? Should I not go? Go get an x-ray, find out if anything's wrong. It's not a big deal. We're not health professionals. As health professionals, we're not that scary, I promise. Also, I like to look at your functionality. Like, how are you functioning in your life? Is your whatever's going on in your brain preventing you from working, doing everything you want to do around the house, enjoying your things, concentrating in school, whatever it is? And that's something, when people say, like, should I go, get a diagnosis? Is something wrong with me? Look at your functioning. Like, how are you functioning in your life? Are you achieving everything you want to achieve? And if it's preventing you, so go get help, and it can be baby steps. I'm not, saying go check yourself into like the acute mental health hospital, you can go talk to a therapist, talk to a friend, do a Google search, call a suicide hotline, the warm line, which is like if you're in complete crisis, right, Danny? Yeah, the warm line, which is like, hey, I need to talk to a friend to see. There's baby steps. Go to a support group, talk to a friend, and then go see a therapist, go see a doctor. It can be, I personally like to go to specialists. If there's something wrong with my stomach, I go to a GI doctor. So go to see a psychiatrist. They're not as scary as it sounds, as many think.
Okay, great. I encourage you all to ask questions if you feel like asking them at all. Feel free to send me a direct message. Otherwise, I'm going to read just a few more
I
questions.
see Susan
Oh, I
Albach
see
has
your
her
hand.
hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Danny. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, thank you. I wonder if anyone has any thoughts on how we can be a better friend to someone with mental illness and adults with mental illness. Thinking of some situations I know of where the friendship was like either at risk or ended because of what seemed like really overreactions on the part of the or ways that that person with mental illness was very easily offended or hurt or otherwise kind of knocked out of their stride by something that I think most or many of us would sort of take in stride. And yeah, just wonder if anyone has any suggestions.
Karen, I think that's a perfect question for you.
Well, one of the suggestions, Susan, is that the friend or person attend the family support group, NAMI family support group, because they go through ways of how to support somebody who is, living with a mental illness. And if that person isn't sure that they understand they have a mental illness, they have something, maybe they have the symptom that is anasagnosia, which is it's a symptom where that person does not know they're ill. For example, if they have schizophrenia, it's a proper symptom of many mental illness like bipolar and schizophrenia. And so there is a way that you can learn to talk with that friend, that loved one, that person. I'm going to write in the chat box that there's a brilliant book called, oh, you can't see it because I've got my special background on, but I Am Not Sick, I Don't Need Help by Xavier Amador. And that helps teach somebody how to talk with how to get to talk to somebody. But it's also about empathy. Not sympathy, not just sympathy, it's empathy. Learn the right things to say, and not say things like, well, you're fine, you're doing something else, everything's fine, to really understand them and to learn them, and also I think to encourage that person to talk to other friends to gain support with the loved one. So it's not just you on your own. There are other people helping out. That's a few of my suggestions, but it might not be exactly answering your point. So I'll hand it over to Julia or Danny.
If I could comment, I think part of Susan's question rang for me that it's also about how we react to someone, and someone with a different perspective on life, it may be threatening, and our own ego can then respond to that in a defensive manner. So I think also an important part is as you've said, is through the empathy, through compassion, through chesed, through loving kindness, is to really have compassion and understanding for where they may be coming from, and to temper the immediate reactions if they're critical or threatening, which we tend to then try and defend and rise to, is to try and also understand where they may be coming from, which also I think is a very important first point to then address all the things that Karen's described.
Okay, great. We have time for one more question. Somebody just wrote, I've heard so many stories about people who want to get help for themselves or a loved one, but bump up against long waits for getting mental health services or appointments with psychiatrists. There seems to be a shortage of psychiatrists in the US. Julia, can you comment on this?
Yes, this is very, very true. It's really unfortunate. And I think my personal theory is it's insurance companies not covering I think we have plenty of psychiatrists. We just have, this is probably politically incorrect to say, but a really effed up insurance system, especially when it comes to behavioral health, because I have seen people in the emergency room who will come in and say like, I'm trying to get a psychiatrist. It's 3 months away. How am I going to deal with this anxiety for 3 months? If the other kind of backwards thing is if you have Medi-Cal or Medicare, it's easier to get mental health, behavioral health help. There's a lot of clinics in the area. So my advice, so there's also Exodus. It's a psychiatric urgent care clinic 24/7, and it's downtown by USC. That area, Exodus, EXODUS. That's one place that even we send people to who, so if, and unfortunately most emergency rooms do not have a psychiatrist there that can write your prescription. Like it'll be somebody who, like a nurse who will see you, who can evaluate if you need to be on a 5150 hold, needs to come into the hospital. But you know what? My best advice is go through all the resources, go through NAMI, just keep at it. Like, don't give up. It's out there. The help is out there. It just takes a little bit of work. Just keep at it. And like I said, the flyer that was sent out with one of the emails, there's a link posted to it, has a lot of resources. Of course, you're always welcome in the hospital. There's a few freestanding psychiatric hospitals. It's out there. You just have to keep at it. Just keep going. Don't give up. Just don't give up.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
there's virtual now. There's with telehealth actually for psych exploded during COVID. So there's a lot through there. So now you can find nationally a psychiatrist.
Okay. Somebody wrote, what about psychiatric mobile response teams? Is that?
Like, yeah, so I think you're talking about like there's Hope Team and Med Team, and all those go through 911. When you call 911, that somebody is imminent threat, as Danny put it, imminent threat to themselves or to others.
Mhm.
So either suicidal or they're so not in reality, they're walking into the street, they want to set the house on fire, they're fighting, things like that.
Yeah, as long as you do make clear. So, if someone's behaving in a threatening manner or threatening other people, then, it's very tempting just to say there's somebody who's acting very aggressively that will prompt a straight conventional police response. So if you suspect that there is mental health at the root of it, then it is very important to convey that to the 911 operator so that they can summon the psychiatric mobile response, or it's called many different things for different police forces, different areas. But if you can convey that to the 911 operator, then they'll make sure that they're not just sending people with handcuffs, but there will be a more understanding support that is summoned at the same time.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Hillary and Adriana, thank you for posting that information in the chat as well. Being cognizant of the time, I'm going to wrap it up here and turn it over to Judy and then Rabbi Carrier. First of all, just thank you all. Thank you, the panelists, for sharing your insight, and thank you everyone for participating, and for those of you who asked questions. It's just great that everyone came out and was willing to approach this very sensitive and important topic. So. Okay, Judy.
Sorry, Monica, before you do that, we got to point out Diane Barr.
Yes, Diane.
Yeah, we were going to, yeah.
It's her baby. She found us. She put this thing together. She sent probably half of the emails in my email box over the last 2 weeks. It's her passion that made tonight what it is, and is so yay. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. I have to say that I am so amazed by Julia and by Karen and by Danny and Monica, because you put so much into this, and I thank you so very much. And all the many other people who were behind this event. Thank you so very much.
Okay.
So Julia took care of one of the things I wanted to say. Before I turn this over to Rabbi Carrier, there's one other person I would like to acknowledge who's with us tonight. Marla Kaufman. I think you're still here, Marla. Wave or make noise so you get highlighted. Marla, say something.
Hi.
She may have left. Anyway, Marla Kaufman is with the Jewish Addiction Awareness Network. She is going to be on with us on March 27th when they make their presentation. And we are really honored to have Marla with us tonight. And with this, I'd like to turn it over to Rabbi Carrier, who has a few words.
Thank you. Also cognizant of the time, I'll make it as few words as possible, but I just wanted to express my gratitude to Julia and Karen and Danny for just really great presentations, Monica for facilitating it, Judy for hosting us, and of course, Diane and all your helpers for being the organizers behind the scenes. And here's why I'm so grateful that we're doing this here at PJTC. Now, our tradition has long recognized, our Jewish tradition has long recognized that health was never merely a matter of the body, but also a matter of the mind and the spirit. Countless accounts of biblical characters like Saul and David who struggled not just in the battlefield, but also with their own mental illness at times. There are rabbis in the Talmud who are spoken of as perishing from depression. Throughout Jewish law, we're called on to take care of our health and safety, and not just our physical, but also our mental health and safety. And with all this, I'd like to think that we are enlightened as a people. But as the British Rabbi Lionel Blue said, Jews are just like everybody else, only more so, which means we suffer from mental illness at the same rates as the general population. And we also suffer from this kind of stigma of talking about it and of seeking help. And that's why I'm so grateful that we're addressing this here to take that stigma out and to diminish it. My prayer for PJTC is that we become known for being a welcoming and healing community and environment for all who need it. And tonight, I feel like we've really made great strides in that direction, thanks to everybody's work and everybody's trust and everybody sharing their voice tonight. The very last thing I'll say is that your clergy at PJTC are at your service. And I know sometimes people who, there are people who hesitate to reach out to mental health professionals for some of the reasons we've talked about tonight, but may feel easier talking to clergy. And I always say I'm not a mental health professional, but I try to be a good listener and I try to be a great person for making referrals. So if at any point you need somebody to talk to and it's easier for you to talk to me or one of our clergy and are willing to get a referral from somebody who knows you and or get a referral to somebody we trust, we are here for you. So thanks again to everybody for just really helping us make great strides as a community.
Thank you, Rabbi. So again, I encourage you to come on March 27th to hear from the Jewish Addiction Awareness Network. I encourage you this Sunday to attend the talk with with Dr. Ron Wolfson about what the future of synagogues can be. I do need to tell you that you need to enroll in advance to get the link. So please sign up for that. It's not something you can just at 10:30 think, oh, maybe I should be there. So please sign up. Look at information about the challah, look at information about what we're doing for Purim. Look at the fact that this Monday night is a congregational meeting. Be with us for the next couple of Thursdays for 3 really interesting social halls. And thank you very much to Danny and Karen and Julia for their presentations, and Monica for her wonderful moderating. And as usual, I am going to ask everyone to unmute. It is a social hall. If you would like to chat a little bit, please do. And again, if anyone has any concerns about anything that was said tonight, we did tape. I'm about to stop taping so we don't tape the chat. But if for any reason you would not like this posted, let me know in the next 24 hours. I think this was a really valuable social hall and would love to see it up on our YouTube channel so that people who missed it tonight would have a chance to hear it. So I think I'm unmuting it. Oh, wait, first I am